A man didn't know the camera was watching. What he did to the dog was shocking. The Phoenix sun burned mercilessly in the cloudless sky, turning the hospital parking lot into a shimmering mirage of heat waves. The temperature display on the emergency room entrance flashed an ominous 115 def, but in the far corner of the lot, inside a small silver sedan, it was much worse. Duke, a golden retriever whose usual bright demeanor had faded to desperate panting, pressed his nose against the narrow gap of the partially opened window. His owner, Dr. Sarah Collins, lay unconscious on the emergency room floor, while outside Dr. Marcus Bennett, known to most as just another homeless man who frequented the hospital grounds, stood frozen, staring at the car. The smartphone video being recorded by a passerby would soon capture what happened next, a desperate act of destruction that would untangle a web of lies, restore a broken family, and ultimately save more lives than anyone could have imagined. But in that moment, as Marcus gripped the rusty pipe in his trembling hands, all he knew was that he had exactly 78 seconds to make a decision that would either uphold the law or save a life. He chose the latter. The sound of shattering glass echoed across the parking lot like a starting gun, setting in motion a chain of events that would change everything. The morning routine in Sarah Collins's modest Phoenix home never varied. At precisely 5:30 a.m., before the merciless Arizona sun could turn the day into an inferno, she would wake to Duke's gentle nudging. The golden retriever's internal clock was more reliable than any alarm, a trait that brought both comfort and a sharp pang of remembrance he had been Rachel's dog first. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the orange prescription bottles lined up on her bedside table. 6 different medications, each a daily reminder of the battle raging within her body. At 32, she was far too young to feel this old, too dedicated to her oncology patients to accept becoming one herself. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had spent the last decade helping others fight cancer, only to find herself on the other side of the consultation desk. Duke watched her morning ritual with unwavering attention, his brown eyes reflecting a wisdom that sometimes made Sarah wonder if he understood more than he let on. He had been there through everything: Rachel's diagnosis, the countless nights of tears and hope, and finally the devastating loss 2 years ago. Now he remained Sarah's constant companion, a living bridge between the sister she lost and the life she was fighting to maintain. The wall of her living room told their story in photographs. Rachel and Sarah in matching graduation gowns, both pursuing their medical dreams, Sarah in oncology, Rachel in research, Duke as a puppy, a surprise gift from Rachel just months before her diagnosis. The 3 of them at the lake house, their last summer together, Rachel's smile bright despite the obvious weight loss and fatigue. Each image was a reminder of what Sarah had lost and what she still had to fight for. Her work at Phoenix General's oncology department had become both her mission and her shelter. Her patients often remarked on her extraordinary empathy, not knowing that every treatment plan she prescribed, every word of encouragement she offered was shaped by personal understanding. She kept her own diagnosis private. Her colleagues knew only that she had regular appointments, attributed to routine checkups after her sister's passing. The morning of the hospital visit, Sarah knew something was different. The fatigue was heavier, the dizziness more pronounced. Duke seemed to sense it too, staying closer than usual, his tail lacking its typical enthusiasm. She had considered rescheduling her appointment, but the latest test results couldn't wait. They would determine if the new treatment protocol was working, if she had more time to continue Rachel's unfinished work. As she prepared to leave, Sarah caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back bore little resemblance to the energetic doctor in the family photos. Her once thick brown hair had thinned, her cheekbones more pronounced, her white coat hanging slightly loose on her frame. But her eyes, the same deep blue as Rachel's, still held the determination that had carried her through medical school, through her sister's illness, and now through her own. Duke's leash in hand, Sarah paused at the door. She hadn't planned to bring him to the appointment, but something in her gut told her she shouldn't be alone today. "Just this once, boy," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. "Rachel would want you to keep an eye on me, wouldn't she?" The drive to the hospital was familiar, too familiar. Every stoplight, every turn reminded her of the countless trips with Rachel. The same route, different sister, same devastating disease. But Sarah refused to accept the same ending. She had promises to keep to her patients, to Duke, and most importantly, to Rachel. Her sister's last words echoed in her mind, "Keep fighting, Sarah. There's always hope, even when you can't see it." She couldn't know that hope would arrive that day in the most unexpected form, through a broken car window in the hands of a man society had forgotten. As she pulled into the hospital parking lot, the Arizona sun already blazing overhead, Sarah Collins had no way of knowing that this ordinary appointment would set in motion events that would not only change her life but fulfill her sister's final wish in ways she could never have imagined. To the hospital staff and passing patients, Dr. Marcus Bennett was just another homeless man who wandered the hospital grounds, his weathered appearance and quiet demeanor blending into the urban landscape. Few would have guessed that 15 years ago he had been one of Phoenix's most respected veterinary surgeons, or that the hands that now collected discarded cans had once performed delicate life-saving operations. The transformation from acclaimed veterinarian to street dweller wasn't sudden. It came in waves of grief and guilt that eroded his life piece by piece. The framed certificates that once lined his office walls now lay in a storage unit he could barely afford, gathering dust alongside family photos too painful to look at but too precious to discard. Among them a picture of his wife Catherine and their daughter Emma beaming outside their clinic on its opening day, taken just 6 months before the accident. Marcus's daily routine had become a shadow of his former life. Each morning he would wake before sunrise in the small tent he'd carefully hidden behind the hospital's maintenance building. The security guards turned a blind eye to his presence, perhaps out of pity, or perhaps because he kept the area cleaner than any other spot on the grounds. He would make his rounds, picking up trash, occasionally helping elderly patients from their cars, and always watching the animals that came and went with their owners, his trained eye still catching signs of distress or illness that others might miss. The pain of his loss had driven him to this hospital, though not for medical care. Phoenix General was where Catherine and Emma had been rushed after the crash, where he had paced the halls for hours before receiving the news that shattered his world. The same halls he now haunted, unable to leave the last place they had been alive. He had sold his practice, donated most of their belongings, and gradually disappeared from the life he once knew. His former mentor, Dr. William Patterson, had tried to reach him in those early days. The older veterinarian had been like a father to Marcus, teaching him not just about animal medicine but about life itself. But Marcus had shut everyone out, convinced he didn't deserve their sympathy or support. The truth about that night, about why he had been late coming home, about the warning he had tried to report, weighed on him like a physical burden. The only things Marcus kept from his previous life were his medical knowledge, which he couldn't forget even if he tried, and a worn leather journal filled with detailed notes about a case that had troubled him deeply. The last case he had worked on before everything fell apart. He kept the journal hidden in a waterproof bag, its pages containing information that still had the power to disturb powerful people. Some days when the desert heat became unbearable, Marcus would find refuge in the hospital's public areas, pretending to read discarded newspapers while actually observing the comings and goings of certain staff members. He recognized more faces than people realized, including some who had been involved in his last case. They didn't recognize him now. His beard was gray, his face weathered by sun and hardship, his former confident stance replaced by the careful invisibility of the homeless. The morning he spotted Duke in the car, something stirred in Marcus's memory. The golden retriever's distinctive markings reminded him of a special case from years ago, a pioneering treatment he had developed for working dogs. But more than that, it was the dog's obvious distress that called to the healer he had tried so hard to bury. As he stood in the scorching parking lot, Marcus felt the weight of his medical oath pressing against 15 years of self-imposed exile. He didn't know it yet, but his decision to save Duke would do more than just rescue a dog from heat stroke. It would finally bring to light the truth he had carried alone for so long, and in doing so save not just himself but others who had been touched by the same hidden corruption that had cost him everything. Duke wasn't just any golden retriever. He was Rachel Collins' final gift to her sister, chosen with the same thoughtful precision she applied to her medical research. 2 weeks before her diagnosis, Rachel had arrived at Sarah's doorstep, the 8-week-old puppy cradled in her arms. "Because you spend too much time alone in that hospital," she had said, her smile hiding the fatigue that had already begun to plague her. The puppy's registered name was Golden Heart's guardian angel, but Rachel had simply called him Duke, after their grandfather who had inspired both sisters to pursue medicine. Like his namesake, Duke possessed an uncanny ability to sense when he was needed most. During Rachel's 18-month battle with cancer, he had divided his time between the sisters, offering silent comfort during chemotherapy sessions and keeping vigil during long nights of shared tears and whispered hopes. In the final weeks, when Rachel moved into Sarah's home for hospice care, Duke rarely left her side. He seemed to understand the gravity of his mission, staying close enough for Rachel to touch but maintaining a careful gentleness that spoke of innate wisdom. The night Rachel passed away, it was Duke who had alerted Sarah, his urgent whining drawing her to her sister's bedside just in time to say goodbye. Sarah often found Duke sitting in Rachel's old room, particularly on difficult days when her own treatments left her exhausted. He would lay his head on Rachel's favorite sweater, still carefully folded on the chair by the window, his eyes fixed on the door as if expecting her return. These moments would break Sarah's heart anew, but they also reminded her that she wasn't alone in missing Rachel. Duke had inherited Rachel's protective nature. He developed an almost supernatural awareness of Sarah's health fluctuations, often detecting her bad days before she herself recognized the symptoms. On mornings when Sarah's strength wavered, Duke would physically block her path to the car, insisting with gentle persistence that she rest. He had become not just a companion but a guardian, honoring his original name in ways Rachel could never have anticipated. The most precious thing Duke guarded, though, was the memory of Rachel's laugh. Sometimes, when Sarah would find the right spot behind his ears, the same spot Rachel had always scratched, his expression of pure joy would mirror the way he used to look at her sister. In these moments, Sarah could almost hear Rachel's voice. "See? I told you he'd take care of you." That fateful morning, when Sarah decided to bring Duke to her appointment, she broke their usual routine. Duke typically stayed home during her hospital visits, a habit born from Rachel's insistence that he conserve his energy for Sarah's recovery days. But something in his persistent nudging and worried eyes convinced her to make an exception. It was as if Rachel's intuition lived on through him, guiding Sarah through a decision that would prove more significant than anyone could have imagined. What no one knew that morning was that Duke carried more than just memories of Rachel. Around his neck, tucked into a small pocket in his collar that Rachel had sewn herself, was a tiny USB drive. Rachel had placed it there during her final days, trusting her beloved companion to guard it until the right moment. Like everything else Rachel had done, this too was calculated, a final act of protection and love that would only be discovered when all the right pieces fell into place. In the quiet hours of the emergency room, while Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness, the contents of her purse were cataloged by hospital staff. Among her belongings was a worn leather notebook, its pages filled with Rachel's meticulous handwriting. The attending nurse, about to set it aside with the other personal effects, noticed a series of photographs slipping from between its pages, images of pharmaceutical trial documents that would prove to be far more significant than they appeared. 2 years prior, Rachel Collins had been more than just a medical researcher at Phoenix General. She had been on the verge of exposing serious irregularities in several high-profile drug trials. Her position in the hospital's research department had given her access to patient records that revealed a disturbing pattern. Working late into the night, she had documented everything: altered test results, suppressed side effects, and most disturbingly, a list of patients who had suffered severe complications that were never reported. The notebook contained Rachel's growing concerns about Meridian Pharmaceuticals' newest cancer drug. Patient outcomes don't match reported data, she had written. Side effects more severe than disclosed. Someone is deliberately altering the trial results. Each entry was dated, annotated, and cross-referenced with patient files she had meticulously reviewed. But most troubling were her notes about unusual resistance to standard treatments in patients who had participated in earlier trials. Sarah had discovered the notebook shortly after Rachel's passing, hidden in a box of research papers. At first she had been too grief-stricken to do more than glance at it, but as her own health began to decline, particular entries caught her attention. Rachel's final notes, written in an increasingly urgent hand, showed growing anxiety about the implications of her discoveries. "They're pushing for fast-track approval," one entry read. "The long-term effects haven't been properly studied. We're missing something crucial." The last entry, dated 3 days before Rachel's death, was particularly chilling: "Meeting with Ethics Committee tomorrow. Bringing full documentation. Sarah needs to know if anything happens. Check Duke's collar." But Rachel never made it to that meeting. Her car accident on the way to the hospital was attributed to wet roads and poor visibility, a tragic but seemingly ordinary event. Now, as Sarah's own medical records lay open on the emergency room computer, the attending physician noticed something unusual. Sarah's symptoms mirrored those described in Rachel's notebook, symptoms that shouldn't have appeared with her type of cancer. The connection was there, hidden in plain sight among Rachel's careful documentation of trial participants and their family members. The nurse who had found the notebook, Linda Martinez, had worked at Phoenix General for 20 years. She remembered Rachel Collins, the dedicated young researcher who always had time to explain complex procedures to the nursing staff. Looking at the photographs that had fallen from the notebook, Linda recognized names and case numbers. She had cared for some of these patients herself, and Rachel's notes about their symptoms matched her own observations from that time. Inside the notebook's back cover, Rachel had taped a small key card. Its surface was worn, but the magnetic strip was intact. Linda recognized it as an access card to the hospital's old research archives, a section that had been officially closed for renovations shortly after Rachel's death. The timing of that closure now seemed less like coincidence and more like deliberate action. Sarah had been carrying this notebook every day for months, searching for the courage to dig deeper into her sister's final investigation. The photographs were her own addition, evidence she had quietly gathered while treating patients whose medical histories raised the same red flags Rachel had documented. But she had never found the USB drive Rachel mentioned, despite checking Duke's collar countless times. As Linda Martinez placed the notebook carefully back among Sarah's belongings, she made a decision that would prove crucial in the coming days. Instead of logging it in the standard inventory of patient effects, she slipped it into her locker for safekeeping. 20 years of nursing had taught her to trust her instincts, and something about those photographs and Rachel's notes set off every warning bell she possessed. Outside in the parking lot, as Marcus Bennett worked to save Duke from the overheated car, he had no way of knowing that the dog he was rescuing carried physical evidence of the same corruption he had tried to expose years ago. The truth that had cost him his family was about to resurface, preserved by one sister's dedication and protected by another's love. The emergency room bustled with its usual morning activity as Dr. William Patterson made his rounds. At 68, he was one of Phoenix General's most respected senior physicians, his silver hair and steady hands a familiar sight in the hospital corridors. That morning, his attention was divided between his patients and the news of a woman who had collapsed outside until he heard the name Collins mentioned during handover. The surname struck a chord deep in his memory. Patterson had known another Collins, a brilliant researcher named Rachel, whose death 2 years ago had troubled him more than he cared to admit. As he reviewed the admission papers, his hands trembled slightly at the sight of the patient's name, Sarah Collins, Rachel's sister. Making his way to the emergency department, Patterson passed the hospital's main entrance just as security footage of the parking lot incident was being reviewed. The grainy video showed a man breaking into a car to rescue a dog, and something about his movements, even in the poor quality footage, seemed hauntingly familiar. Patterson found himself drawn to the security office, where the footage was being replayed. He watched as the man on the screen worked with practiced efficiency to free the trapped animal. The way he handled the dog after the rescue, checking vital signs with professional precision, spoke of formal veterinary training. "Can you enhance that section?" Patterson asked the security officer, his voice barely masking his growing suspicion. As the footage zoomed in on the man's face, 15 years seemed to fall away. Despite the gray beard and weathered features, Patterson recognized his former student and protégé, Marcus Bennett. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. Marcus had been his most promising student, the son he never had. After Marcus's wife and daughter died in that terrible accident, Patterson had tried desperately to reach him, but Marcus had disappeared, leaving behind only rumors and unanswered questions. Now, watching the footage, Patterson's mind raced back to their last conversation. It had been in his office just days before the accident. Marcus had been agitated, talking about irregularities he'd discovered in some veterinary drug trials that had connections to human pharmaceutical testing. He had mentioned names, including some powerful figures at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Patterson had advised caution, suggesting they gather more evidence before making any accusations. but Marcus had been adamant about reporting his findings immediately. People need to know he had insisted. These drugs aren't just hurting animals. The next time Patterson saw Marcus's name, it was in a newspaper article about the tragic accident that claimed his family. Moving closer to the security monitor, Patterson studied the man who had once been his star pupil. The confident stride was gone, replaced by the careful movements of someone used to avoiding attention. But the underlying expertise remained the way he had recognized the dog's distress, his quick decision-making, his methodical care even under pressure. The timing seemed too precise to be coincidence. Sarah Collins's collapse, Marcus's reappearance, and a rescue caught on camera. Patterson remembered Rachel Collins's frequent visits to his office, her careful questions about pharmaceutical trials and testing protocols. He had assumed her interest was purely professional, but now he wondered if she had been following the same trail that had led to Marcus's tragic loss. With hands that had steadied countless surgeries, Patterson reached for his phone. For 15 years he had carried the same number for Marcus, never quite able to delete it. Now, watching his former student walk away from the camera's view, Patterson knew it was time to break the silence. Whatever had driven Marcus into hiding, whatever connection existed between the Collins sisters and his former student's past, the truth needed to come out. As Patterson stepped away from the security office, his decision made, he didn't notice James Morrison, Meridian's chief legal officer, watching from the shadows of the corridor, his face darkening at the sight of the security footage playing on the monitors. In the sterile quiet of his private office, James Morrison reviewed the security footage for the third time. The sight of Marcus Bennett, a man he had assumed long buried in obscurity, sent a chill through his carefully maintained composure. As Meridian Pharmaceuticals' chief legal officer, Morrison had orchestrated many cover-ups over the years, but two cases had always haunted him: the Bennett accident and Rachel Collins's unfortunate death. Opening his laptop, Morrison accessed a secured folder labeled Historical Compliance Records. Inside lay the true documentation of events from 15 years ago. The night of the Bennett family tragedy hadn't been a simple car accident. Marcus had filed a formal complaint about Meridian's veterinary drug trials that afternoon, copying multiple regulatory agencies. 3 hours later, his wife and daughter's car had inexplicably lost its brakes on a gentle slope. Morrison's phone buzzed with a message from his security team. They had been monitoring Sarah Collins's activities for months, ever since she began requesting specific patient files from past trial periods. The message confirmed his fears. Sarah's emergency admission had coincided with her scheduled review of archived trial data. More concerning was the presence of both Marcus Bennett and William Patterson at the hospital. The investigation into Rachel Collins's death had been equally methodical. Her car's brake lines had shown similar signs of tampering, but the police, overwhelmed with cases and guided by carefully placed evidence, had attributed it to normal wear and tear. Morrison had personally ensured that Rachel's research materials were secured during the confusion following her death, but one crucial piece had always been missing: her external drive containing the complete trial data. Standing at his office window, Morrison watched the morning traffic flow past the pharmaceutical company's gleaming headquarters. The imminent approval of their new cancer drug line represented billions in potential revenue. 15 years of carefully manipulated trials, strategic donations, and buried evidence had led to this moment. He couldn't allow three loose ends: Sarah Collins, Marcus Bennett, and William Patterson, to unravel everything. In his desk drawer lay a sealed envelope containing contingency plans for various threats to the company. Morrison had never needed to implement Protocol 17 before, but the convergence of these particular individuals left him no choice. He pressed the intercom button, summoning his private security coordinator. Across town, in the hospital parking lot, something unexpected was happening. As paramedics treated Duke for heat exhaustion, one of them noticed an unusual bulge in the dog's collar. The discovery would have seemed insignificant if Linda Martinez hadn't chosen that moment to step outside, Rachel's notebook clutched protectively against her chest. Patterson, watching from the hospital entrance, saw the paramedic hand something small to Linda, a USB drive, weathered but intact. The nurse's eyes widened in recognition as she compared it to a note in the notebook. 15 years of silence began to crack, revealing the carefully hidden connections between a veterinarian's warnings, a researcher's death, and a doctor's current battle for survival. Morrison's security team reported another development. Traffic cameras had captured Marcus Bennett making his way not toward his usual haunts but in the direction of his old storage unit. The same unit that contained detailed records of the veterinary trials that had first raised his suspicions years ago. The truth about both accidents lay scattered across Phoenix like pieces of a broken mirror, each fragment reflecting part of a larger picture. Marcus's rescued documents, Rachel's hidden drive, and Sarah's gathered evidence formed a triangle of truth that threatened to expose years of pharmaceutical fraud. As morning shifted to afternoon, 3 separate computers accessed critical pieces of information. In the hospital's emergency room, Linda Martinez began uploading the contents of Rachel's drive. In his storage unit, Marcus Bennett uncovered his old case files. And in the hospital's administrative office, William Patterson logged into archived email servers, searching for a 15-year-old complaint that had never been officially investigated. Unknown to all of them, James Morrison's finger hovered over his phone, preparing to initiate a protocol designed to ensure that some truths remained buried. But he had failed to account for one crucial factor: the power of a viral video showing a homeless man's compassion, a video that was already spreading across social media, drawing unwanted attention to the very scene he had hoped to keep quiet. In the quiet efficiency of the hospital's administrative office, Linda Martinez spread the contents of Rachel's notebook across her desk. 20 years of nursing had taught her to trust patterns, and the one emerging before her was impossible to ignore. The notebook contained more than just research notes. It held a carefully documented timeline of patient symptoms, treatment anomalies, and medication responses that spanned nearly 2 decades. Dr. William Patterson joined her, bringing his own collection of historical patient records. His hand, steady through countless surgeries, trembled slightly as he laid out the files. The similarities between past cases and Sarah Collins's current symptoms were striking. Patients who had participated in Meridian's early trials had shown unusual resistance to standard treatments, just as Sarah was experiencing now. "Look at these dates." Linda pointed to a series of entries in Rachel's notebook. "Every major adverse event coincides with the introduction of a new trial phase." Patterson nodded, his expression grave as he matched the dates to his own records. The pattern was clear. Each new drug trial had left a trail of complications that emerged months, sometimes years, after the initial treatment. The hospital's chief of medicine, Dr. Robert Anderson, entered the office quietly, closing the door behind him. His presence lent gravity to their informal investigation. "The board is asking questions about this morning's incident," he began, placing a tablet showing the viral video on the desk. "But I'm more interested in why Sarah Collins was accessing restricted trial records before she collapsed." Linda hesitated, then carefully explained about Rachel's notebook and the USB drive found in Duke's collar. As she spoke, Dr. Anderson's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. He had been Rachel's supervisor during her research years, and her death had never sat right with him. Now, looking at the evidence spread before him, he understood why. The investigation expanded as more hospital staff came forward with their own observations. A lab technician remembered running unusual tests for Rachel, ones that weren't part of standard trial protocols. A pharmacy clerk produced records of medication discrepancies that had been dismissed as clerical errors. Each piece added depth to the picture Rachel had begun to paint before her death. Sarah's current medical file lay open among the scattered papers, her recent test results telling a story that paralleled cases from 15 years ago. The same pattern of treatment resistance, the same unexpected complications, all pointing back to Meridian's early trial medications. Patterson recognized the signature effects from Marcus's veterinary observations, the very ones that had led to his tragic loss. Dr. Anderson accessed the hospital's secure servers, pulling up archived emails from Rachel's final weeks. Her last communications revealed increasing urgency, including a cryptic message about securing evidence off-site. "She knew," he said quietly. "She knew, and she tried to protect the information the only way she could." The viral video of Marcus's rescue had reached hundreds of thousands of views, drawing media attention to Phoenix General. Reporters began asking questions about the hospital's connection to Meridian Pharmaceuticals, questions that made the board of directors increasingly nervous. The timing couldn't have been more critical or more dangerous. In the emergency room, Sarah's condition stabilized enough for her to speak with investigators. Her voice weak but determined, she described finding patterns in her own patients' records that matched her sister's research. Rachel wasn't just collecting data, she explained. She was building a case, proving that these trials were compromised from the beginning. As the afternoon wore on, hospital security reported unusual activity. Unknown individuals had attempted to access the records room using outdated credentials. Security cameras caught glimpses of men in suits making inquiries about Sarah Collins's location. The hospital's protective mechanisms, designed for patient privacy, now served a more urgent purpose. Linda Martinez, looking through the emergency room window at Sarah's sleeping form, made a decision. She began digitizing Rachel's notebook, sending copies to trusted colleagues at other hospitals. Dr. Patterson did the same with his records, ensuring the evidence couldn't be easily erased or altered. Dr. Anderson, understanding the gravity of the situation, initiated emergency protocols to secure all related patient files. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture that grew clearer and more disturbing with each new connection. But as the investigation gained momentum, none of them realized they were racing against time. In his office across town, James Morrison was already setting in motion plans that would test the limits of their determination to uncover the truth. As evening approached and hospital visiting hours drew to a close, Sarah Collins received permission to see Duke. The medical staff wheeled her to a small courtyard where the golden retriever had been resting under veterinary supervision. The reunion was emotional, Duke's tail thumping weakly against the ground as Sarah reached out to touch his fur, both of them survivors of the day's ordeal. Marcus Bennett stood at a distance, watching the interaction with professional interest. Despite his years away from practice, his clinical eye noted Duke's improving vital signs and responsive behavior. The dog had made a remarkable recovery, testament to his underlying strength and the quick intervention. What Marcus didn't expect was Duke's reaction when he approached to check the IV line. The golden retriever's head lifted, his eyes focusing on Marcus with an intensity that seemed almost recognition. Duke's tail began wagging with renewed energy, and he made a soft whining sound that drew Sarah's attention to her dog's rescuer for the first time. The connection was immediate and unexpected, Duke reaching toward Marcus while maintaining his gentle contact with Sarah's hand. "He never reacts this way to strangers," Sarah observed, her voice still weak but carrying a note of curiosity. "The last time I saw him this excited was with my sister's old veterinarian, years ago." She studied Marcus's face, noting the expertise in his movements as he checked Duke's hydration levels. "You've worked with animals before, haven't you?" Marcus hesitated, years of practiced anonymity warring with the moment's strange intimacy. A lifetime ago, he admitted, his voice rough from lack of use. "Golden retrievers were my specialty, particularly those bred for therapy work." His hands moved automatically, finding the pressure points that would comfort Duke, using techniques he had developed during his practice years. Sarah watched his movements with growing recognition. "Wait," she said slowly, "those pressure point techniques my sister Rachel used to talk about a veterinarian who pioneered that approach for therapy dogs. Dr. Bennett, wasn't it?" The name hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Marcus's hand stilled on Duke's fur. It had been 15 years since anyone had called him by his title, 15 years since he had allowed himself to acknowledge that part of his past. But there was something in Sarah's voice, a hint of Rachel's determination, that made evasion impossible. "Rachel Collins," he said quietly. "She consulted with me about therapy dog training protocols just before he trailed off, the weight of unspoken tragedies filling the space between them. She was investigating something important, wasn't she?" Sarah's medical training hadn't prepared her for this moment. The homeless man who had saved her dog was the same veterinarian her sister had quoted so often, the one whose research had helped shape her own investigations. "She never finished her investigation," Sarah replied carefully. "There was an accident." Duke whined softly, pressing his body against Marcus's legs while keeping his head near Sarah's hand, physically connecting them. The dog's behavior seemed deliberate, almost purposeful, as if fulfilling a long-held instruction. Sarah remembered Rachel's last words about Duke's collar, and suddenly the day's events took on new meaning. A noise at the courtyard entrance made them both look up. Dr. Patterson stood there, his face a mixture of emotions as he took in the scene before him. "Marcus," he said simply, his voice carrying years of unspoken concern. It's time we talked about what really happened 15 years ago. The courtyard fell silent except for Duke's steady breathing. The golden retriever looked between the three humans, his presence somehow making the moment less daunting. Sarah reached for her IV pole, struggling to sit more upright. "Whatever happened then," she said with quiet determination, "it's connected to what's happening now. And I think Rachel knew it would be Duke who brought us together." Marcus looked down at his weathered hands, then at the dog who had forced him out of hiding. For 15 years he had carried the weight of his knowledge alone, protecting himself through anonymity. But seeing Sarah's fragile strength, so reminiscent of Rachel's determination, he made his decision. "Your sister," he began carefully, "was investigating the same pharmaceutical company that I had reported just before my family's accident. She found something in their trial data, didn't she?" Sarah nodded, her hand tightening on Duke's fur. As the evening light faded, 3 people and a dog formed an unlikely alliance in the hospital courtyard. Duke settled between them, his presence a living bridge between past and present, connecting threads of loss and hope that had seemed irreparably broken. Dr. William Patterson led Sarah and Marcus to his private office, a space that had witnessed countless confidential conversations over the years. As Duke settled at Sarah's feet, Patterson retrieved a worn manila envelope from his desk safe, his movements deliberate and measured. "The night before your family's accident," Marcus Patterson began, spreading photographs across his desk, "you left these with me. You said they were insurance, but I never understood against what until now." The images showed laboratory results, comparing animal trials with human patient data from Meridian's early testing phases. Marcus's hands trembled as he picked up one of the photographs. "These were from my last case," he said, his voice steadying with each word. "A series of unexplained organ failures in therapy dogs. The pattern matched complications reported in human trials, but Meridian insisted they were unrelated incidents." Sarah leaned forward, her medical training allowing her to see the connections that had eluded others. "The cellular degradation pattern," she observed, pointing to a specific image. "It's nearly identical to what Rachel documented in her research and," she hesitated, "to my own test results." Patterson pulled out another document, this one a formal complaint filed by Marcus 15 years ago. "You tried to warn him," he said quietly. "The day before the accident you submitted this to the FDA, but someone intercepted it before it could be properly investigated." The office fell silent as Sarah read the complaint. Marcus had detailed everything: the altered lab results, the suppressed adverse reactions, the statistical manipulation that hid the true scope of the problems. It was the same pattern Rachel had uncovered years later, the same issues that might now be affecting Sarah's own health. "The accident wasn't an accident," Marcus said finally, his voice carrying the weight of 15 years of silence. "Catherine and Emma were driving to meet me at the hospital. I'd found proof that Meridian was falsifying their safety data, but someone had tampered with our car's brakes." Patterson moved to his computer, pulling up archived security footage from the hospital parking garage. "I kept copies," he explained, waiting for the right moment. "Watch the grainy video showed a figure in a maintenance uniform working under Marcus's family car just hours before the crash." Sarah's hand found Duke's head, drawing strength from his steady presence. "The same thing happened to Rachel," she said. "The police blamed wet roads, but she had just scheduled a meeting with the ethics committee. She told me to check Duke's collar if anything happened to her." Patterson nodded gravely. "Rachel came to me a month before her death, asking about Marcus's old cases. She'd found a connection between the animal trials and long-term complications in human patients, but she needed Marcus's original documentation to prove it. And now they're watching Sarah," Marcus added, the protective instinct that had driven him to save Duke evident in his voice. "Her symptoms, her access to patient records, she's too close to the truth." Patterson turned to his former student, regret evident in his features. "I should have done more 15 years ago, Marcus. I should have fought harder to investigate what happened to your family. But we can make it right now, together." Sarah straightened in her wheelchair, her doctor's determination showing through her physical weakness. "We have everything we need now," she said. "Rachel's research, Marcus's original evidence, and my current patient data. It's a complete picture of a decades-long cover-up." Duke suddenly lifted his head, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Through the office window they could see men in suits speaking with hospital security, showing badges that caused the guard's expression to shift from suspicion to compliance. Patterson acted quickly, gathering the evidence into his briefcase. "They'll be here soon," he said, his voice urgent but controlled. "Marcus, take Sarah and Duke through the service corridor. I'll handle our visitors and meet you at the safe house we discussed earlier." As Marcus helped Sarah into her wheelchair, Duke standing protectively at her side, Patterson placed a hand on his former student's shoulder. "No more running, Marcus. It's time we faced this together." The group moved swiftly through the hospital's back passages, their unlikely alliance strengthened by shared purpose and the weight of truth they carried. As they emerged into the evening air, Sarah looked at Marcus and saw not a homeless man, but a healer reclaiming his purpose. Duke walked between them, the living link between past and present, carrying in his collar the final piece of evidence they needed to expose a truth too long buried. In the safe house, a modest ranch-style home on the outskirts of Phoenix, Sarah sat at a kitchen table covered with medical files. Her hands moved methodically through Rachel's research notes while Marcus and Patterson cross-referenced patient histories. Duke maintained his vigilant watch by the window, occasionally turning to check on Sarah's condition. Linda Martinez had secretly transferred Sarah's complete medical records to a secure drive before leaving the hospital. As Sarah reviewed her own case alongside Rachel's documentation, a disturbing pattern emerged. Her symptoms didn't follow the typical progression of her diagnosed condition. Instead, they aligned perfectly with the complications Rachel had documented in patients from Meridian's early trials. "Look at this," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. She placed her recent blood work next to a set of lab results from Rachel's files. These markers are identical to the patients Rachel was tracking, down to the unusual protein formations. It's not just similar, it's exactly the same pattern. Patterson leaned forward, examining the results with the practiced eye of a veteran physician. These elevated levels, he noted, pointing to specific data points, they matched the anomalies Marcus found in the therapy dogs 15 years ago. The same cellular response, just on a different timeline. Sarah pulled out another document, this one from her sister's personal medical file. Rachel wasn't just researching these cases, she said quietly. She was experiencing the same symptoms. That's why she was so determined to find the connection. She knew something was wrong with the drug trials because she was living it. Marcus moved to the table, his years of veterinary expertise providing a unique perspective. "In the animal trials, we noticed the effects were generational. Dogs exposed to the trial drugs passed genetic markers to their offspring, making them more susceptible to certain conditions. Rachel must have realized the same thing could happen in humans." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her family medical history. "Our mother participated in one of Meridian's earliest trials years before Rachel and I were born. She was told it was a routine treatment, but according to Rachel's notes, it was an undisclosed experimental drug." Patterson opened his laptop, accessing the digital copies of hospital records he had secured. Meridian's marketing materials never mentioned the possibility of generational effects. They buried that data, along with evidence of severe complications in trial participants and their families. The group worked through the night, organizing their evidence into a clear timeline. Sarah's current condition wasn't just a cruel twist of fate, it was the direct result of corporate negligence spanning decades. Rachel had discovered this connection and paid with her life for attempting to expose it. Duke suddenly raised his head, ears alert. Through the window, they could see a car passing slowly by the house for the third time in an hour. The immediacy of their danger was clear. Meridian's reach extended far beyond the hospital walls. "We need to get this information to people who can act on it," Sarah said, her doctor's instinct for saving lives overriding her personal fears. There could be thousands of families affected by these trials, generations of people at risk without knowing why. Patterson began copying their collected evidence onto multiple secure drives. "I have contacts at several medical journals," he said, "people who can't be easily silenced or bought off. But we need to move quickly." Marcus studied Sarah's latest test results with growing concern. Her symptoms were accelerating, following the same aggressive pattern he had observed in the animal trials. Time wasn't just running out for their investigation, it was running out for Sarah herself. "There's something else in Rachel's notes," Sarah said, pulling out a final document. She was working on a treatment protocol, something to counteract the cellular damage. She never got to test it, but the theoretical framework is sound. The morning sun began to peek through the windows as they finished consolidating their evidence. Sarah's medical training, Marcus's veterinary experience, and Patterson's years of clinical practice had together unveiled a truth that no one could have uncovered alone. Duke moved to Sarah's side, resting his head on her lap as if sensing her fatigue. In his presence, Sarah found the strength to voice what they were all thinking. Rachel didn't just leave us evidence of wrongdoing. She left us a roadmap to make it right. In the early hours of the morning, Marcus Bennett sat at his old microscope, carefully examining tissue samples from Sarah's latest biopsy. The safe house's spare bedroom had been converted into a makeshift laboratory, equipped with basic medical supplies Patterson had discreetly procured. Despite 15 years away from practice, Marcus's hands moved with practiced precision, muscle memory guiding each adjustment of the microscope's fine focus. The cellular degradation pattern is consistent with what I observed in the advanced cases, Marcus explained, his professional demeanor returning with each passing moment. But there's something different here. The rate of deterioration is slower, more controlled. Rachel's preliminary treatment protocol might have already been having an effect. Sarah, resting in a nearby chair with Duke at her feet, watched Marcus work. His transformation from the quiet homeless man who had rescued her dog to the focused medical professional before her was remarkable. Years of hiding had not diminished his expertise. If anything, the urgency of their situation had sharpened it. Patterson entered the room carrying Rachel's treatment notes. "I've reviewed her proposed intervention," he said, placing the documents beside Marcus's microscope. She theorized that combining traditional treatments with a specific enzyme inhibitor could halt the cellular cascade effect. The question is, how do we synthesize it? Marcus adjusted the microscope's magnification, studying the interaction between Sarah's cells and the experimental treatment Rachel had begun developing. In the veterinary trials, we saw similar cellular responses in dogs treated with a modified version of the standard protocol. The key was timing the interventions to coincide with the body's natural defense mechanisms. As he spoke, Marcus reached for his old leather journal, its pages filled with detailed observations from his final cases. "Here," he said, pointing to a specific entry, "we had success using a stepped approach, gradually introducing the modified treatment while monitoring cellular response. Rachel's protocol follows a similar principle, but she's refined it for human application." Sarah leaned forward, her medical training allowing her to grasp the implications. The treatment wouldn't just mask symptoms, she realized. It would actually reverse the damage at a cellular level. That's why Meridian wanted to bury this research. It proves their drug's harmful effects are reversible with the right intervention. Duke suddenly stood, moving to Marcus's side and pressing against his leg. The gesture seemed to give Marcus pause, and he looked down at the dog with newfound understanding. "Rachel didn't just leave us the evidence," he said quietly. "She left us the cure. But she knew it would take both veterinary and human medical expertise to implement it properly." Patterson began organizing the scattered papers into a coherent treatment protocol. Marcus's experience with the animal trials provides the foundation, he explained. Rachel's research builds on that, and Sarah's current medical data gives us the final piece, a real-time test case to validate the treatment approach. Marcus made final adjustments to the microscope settings, his movements deliberate and focused. "We'll need a proper lab to synthesize the compounds," he said, his voice carrying the authority of his years of research. "And we'll need to monitor the treatment progression carefully. One mistake could accelerate the cellular damage instead of reversing it." As the morning light strengthened, Sarah watched Marcus continue his meticulous examination. The man who had lost everything to protect the truth was now their best hope for implementing Rachel's solution. His years on the street had not erased his knowledge, they had simply buried it beneath layers of grief and guilt. Patterson placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, a gesture that bridged their 15 years of separation. "Welcome back, Dr. Bennett," he said softly. "We've missed your expertise." Duke wagged his tail gently, moving between Sarah and Marcus, as if understanding his role in bringing them together. The golden retriever's presence seemed to complete a circle that had begun years ago with Rachel's careful planning. Marcus finally looked up from the microscope, his eyes clear and focused. "We have everything we need," he stated with professional certainty. "Rachel gave us the roadmap. Now it's time to finish what she started." The viral video of Marcus rescuing Duke had surpassed 1 million views by morning. Local news stations began running the story hourly, focusing on the heartwarming narrative of a homeless man's heroic action. However, in Meridian Pharmaceuticals' executive suite, James Morrison watched the coverage with growing concern. The man in the video has been identified as Dr. Marcus Bennett. A former veterinary researcher announced a news anchor, as side-by-side images showed Marcus from his professional days alongside the current footage. Dr. Bennett disappeared from the medical community 15 years ago following a tragic accident that claimed his family's lives. Morrison immediately convened an emergency meeting with Meridian's crisis management team. The conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Phoenix, but all attention focused on the multiple screens displaying various news coverage and social media reactions. "The timing is problematic," Morrison stated, his carefully measured tone masking his anxiety. "With FDA approval pending for our new drug line, we cannot afford public scrutiny of our past trials, especially given Dr. Bennett's connection to both the Collins sisters." The media coverage expanded beyond the rescue. Investigative reporters began digging into Marcus's background, uncovering his previous research and its connection to Meridian. One particularly persistent journalist, Victoria Chen from the Phoenix Tribune, started asking questions about the timing of Marcus's family tragedy and his prior complaints about pharmaceutical trials. At the safe house, Patterson monitored the growing media storm on his laptop. "The publicity cuts both ways," he explained to Sarah and Marcus. "It makes us more visible, but it also makes it harder for Meridian to act without drawing attention." Local community organizations began organizing support for Marcus, establishing a fund for his rehabilitation. Social media users shared old photographs and articles about his veterinary work, praising his dedication to animal welfare. The story resonated particularly strongly with medical professionals who began sharing their own experiences with questionable pharmaceutical trials. Morrison's team tracked every mention, every share, every comment. Their sophisticated monitoring systems flagged a concerning trend. People were beginning to connect Marcus's past research with recent controversies surrounding Meridian's drug trials. The narrative was shifting from a simple human interest story to something more dangerous. "We need to control this narrative," Morrison instructed his team. "Release the statement about Dr. Bennett's history of mental instability following his family's tragedy. Emphasize his 15-year absence from medical practice. Question his credibility without directly attacking him." However, the attempted character assassination backfired. Medical colleagues from Marcus's past came forward, defending his professional reputation and questioning why such a respected veterinarian would abandon his practice without cause. The social media response turned increasingly skeptical of Meridian's official position. Victoria Chen's investigation deepened. She discovered sealed court documents relating to Marcus's original complaints about the animal trials. Though the records themselves remained confidential, the existence of multiple sealed files suggested a pattern of suppressed information. At the safe house, Sarah watched the coverage with growing concern. "They're getting close to the truth," she observed, "but they're also making us easier to find." Duke pressed against her leg reassuringly, his protective instinct more alert than ever. Morrison's next move proved more subtle. Meridian released a press statement announcing a new charitable initiative supporting homeless healthcare workers, appearing to embrace the publicity while deflecting attention from the underlying issues. The company offered to sponsor Marcus's rehabilitation and return to veterinary practice. "It's a trap," Marcus stated firmly, watching the announcement. "They're trying to bring me into their sphere of control, make any future accusations look like ingratitude." His years on the street had taught him to recognize manipulation in all its forms. Patterson received urgent messages from concerned colleagues at multiple hospitals. The increased scrutiny had led to widespread review of past trial data. Questions were being raised about patterns of complications that matched Rachel's original research. The viral video had created an unexpected shield. Public attention made it impossible for Meridian to act directly against them. However, it also accelerated their timeline. They needed to compile and release their evidence before Morrison's team could bury the truth under a wave of charitable publicity and manufactured doubt. Sarah, despite her weakening condition, understood the gravity of their situation. "Rachel knew this would happen," she said softly, stroking Duke's head. "She knew the truth would need a spotlight to protect it. That's why she made sure Marcus's rescue would be recorded. The first attempt to silence them came subtly. Sarah's medical credentials were temporarily suspended pending a review of her mental fitness to practice citing concerns about her recent collapse. The hospital board, under pressure from unnamed sources, placed her on immediate administrative leave. Simultaneously, licensing authorities began investigating Marcus's past veterinary cases, questioning his involvement in the controversial drug trials. Dr. William Patterson arrived at the safe house with grave news. They're systematically discrediting everyone connected to the investigation, he reported, placing a thick folder on the kitchen table. 3 of my colleagues who accessed Rachel's research files have been placed under internal review. The hospital's ethics committee has suddenly announced a comprehensive audit of all recent cases. Inside the folder lay evidence of a coordinated campaign. Anonymous complaints had been filed against medical professionals who showed interest in Rachel's research. Laboratory results related to their investigation began disappearing from hospital databases, replaced by altered versions that obscured the critical patterns they had discovered. Morrison's strategy became clear when Linda Martinez was called before the hospital's disciplinary board. The charges against her seemed minor procedural violations in handling patient records, but the message was unmistakable. Anyone who helped expose the truth would face professional consequences. Sarah, though weakened by her condition, refused to remain silent. They used the same tactics with Rachel, she explained, her voice steady despite her fatigue. First the subtle warnings, then the professional isolation, finally the direct threats. But she kept detailed records of every attempt to silence her. The pressure intensified when Marcus's old storage unit was mysteriously broken into, though the perpetrators didn't realize he had already removed his crucial documents. Police classified it as routine vandalism, but the targeted nature of the break-in was obvious to those who understood the stakes. Patterson discovered his office had been searched when he returned to the hospital to retrieve additional files. Nothing was obviously disturbed, but years of experience had taught him to notice the small science papers slightly misaligned, computer files accessed during off hours, reference books returned to slightly different positions on his shelves. The most concerning development came when Duke's veterinary records were flagged for review. The official reason cited potential exposure to experimental treatments, requiring the golden retriever to be quarantined for observation. It was a transparent attempt to separate them from the living link to Rachel's evidence. "They're trying to isolate us," Marcus observed, his years on the street having taught him to recognize mounting threats. "Cut off our access to resources, separate us from supporters, make us look unstable or unreliable. It's about creating doubt, making people question everything we might reveal." Sarah's patient files began showing discrepancies. Test results were amended, diagnosis codes altered, treatment histories modified. The changes were subtle but significant, designed to cast doubt on any medical evidence they might present. Her original records, thankfully secured by Linda Martinez, proved these alterations were deliberate. The local media, initially sympathetic to Marcus's story, began receiving anonymous tips about his past. Suggestions of professional misconduct, implications of mental instability, hints of pharmaceutical addiction, all carefully crafted to taint his credibility without making direct accusations that could be legally challenged. Patterson's reputation came under fire next. Anonymous emails to the hospital board questioned his judgment in supporting discredited theories, suggesting his age might be affecting his professional competence. His decades of distinguished service offered some protection, but the whisper campaign took its toll. Victoria Chen, the investigative reporter, found herself facing similar pressure. Her editor received complaints about her obsession with the story, and advertising contracts mysteriously came under review. Yet she persisted, recognizing that the intensity of the pushback indicated the significance of what they were uncovering. Throughout it all, Duke remained their constant guardian, his instincts alerting them to unfamiliar vehicles in the neighborhood or unexpected visitors approaching the safe house. His presence provided not just security but stability, a reminder of why they couldn't give up despite the mounting pressure. Sarah's condition continued to deteriorate, making their race against time even more crucial. "They think they can wait us out," she said during a particularly difficult evening. "But Rachel left us everything we need. We just have to hold on long enough to get the truth out." The tension peaked when Patterson discovered unauthorized access attempts on his private medical records server. Someone was systematically trying to erase every digital trace of their investigation. The attempt failed thanks to his foresight in creating multiple secure backups, but it confirmed their suspicions about the lengths their opponents would go to maintain their secrets. Duke's protective behavior intensified on the seventh evening at the safe house. The golden retriever, typically calm and composed, exhibited unusual restlessness. His attention remained fixed on the windows, his ears constantly alert, and his normally relaxed posture became rigid with tension. Sarah, resting on the living room couch while reviewing medical documents, noticed the change in Duke's demeanor first. The dog positioned himself strategically between her and the front door, occasionally releasing low, warning growls that seemed out of character for his gentle nature. Having learned to trust his instincts through years of companionship, Sarah alerted Marcus and Patterson to Duke's concerning behavior. Marcus, drawing from his veterinary expertise, recognized the signs of genuine threat detection rather than simple anxiety. Service dogs are trained to recognize subtle changes in their environment, he explained quietly, moving to secure the premises. Duke's behavior suggests he's detecting multiple unfamiliar presences. Patterson dimmed the interior lights and conducted a careful surveillance of the property's perimeter. Through the darkness, he observed several unmarked vehicles positioned strategically around the neighborhood, their occupants maintaining suspicious vigilance of the safe house. Duke's agitation peaked precisely at 9:45 p.m. when a deliberately casual knock sounded at the front door. The visitor identified himself as a local police officer conducting a routine wellness check, but Duke's intensified growling suggested otherwise. His hackles raised, and he positioned himself more firmly in front of Sarah, clearly sensing malicious intent behind the seemingly innocent visit. The attempt at deception became evident when Sarah noticed additional shadows moving along the side of the house, attempting to access the rear entrance while the front door officer maintained their attention. Duke's reaction was immediate and decisive. His warning bark, sharp and authoritative, alerted Marcus to the flanking movement just as the back door lock began to turn. In the ensuing moments, Duke's protective instincts proved invaluable. When the intruders breached the rear entrance, expecting to find an unprotected target, they instead encountered a prepared defense. Duke's commanding presence and unwavering stance created crucial moments of hesitation among the intruders, allowing Patterson to activate the silent alarm system he had installed. Sarah, despite her weakened condition, maintained remarkable composure. Following Duke's lead, she moved precisely as the dog guided her, staying away from windows and potential lines of sight. His body remained in constant protective proximity, creating a living shield between her and any potential threat. The situation reached its critical point when one intruder managed to enter through a partially secured window. Duke's response was instantaneous but measured. Rather than attacking, he positioned himself strategically, his deep warning growl and defensive stance making it clear that any advance toward Sarah would be met with fierce resistance. Victoria Chen, who had been conducting surveillance of her own, captured the entire incident on high-resolution video from a concealed position. The footage clearly showed the coordinated nature of the attempted intrusion and the professional methodology of the perpetrators, evidence that would prove crucial in the days to come. Local law enforcement, alerted by Patterson's silent alarm and Chen's urgent call, arrived with unprecedented speed. The intruders retreated, but not before Duke's actions had ensured the preservation of critical evidence. His strategic positioning had prevented the intruders from accessing the room containing their documented findings. In the aftermath, as police secured the scene, Sarah held Duke close, her hands trembling slightly as she examined him for any injuries. The dog remained vigilant but calm, transitioning seamlessly from defender to comforter, sensing Sarah's need for reassurance. Marcus, assessing Duke professionally, noted the perfect balance of protective instinct and controlled response. This wasn't just training, he observed. Rachel must have specifically prepared him for this kind of situation. His reactions were too precise, too targeted to be coincidental. Patterson, reviewing the security footage with investigating officers, pointed out the professional nature of the attempted intrusion. They weren't common criminals, he explained. Their methods suggest corporate security training. This was a coordinated attempt to silence us. Duke maintained his protective vigil throughout the night, refusing to rest until he was certain the threat had fully passed. His unwavering dedication provided not just physical security but emotional stability for the entire team, particularly Sarah, whose condition required consistent calm to prevent deterioration. Marcus Bennett stood before the storage unit he had avoided for 15 years, his hands trembling slightly as he inserted the key. Inside lay the remnants of his former life medical certificates, family photographs, and most importantly, the original documentation of the cases that had led to his family's tragedy. After the attempted intrusion at the safe house, he realized that protecting Sarah meant confronting his past completely. Patterson accompanied him, providing silent support as Marcus raised the metal door. The musty air carried the weight of memories he had tried desperately to forget. "I should have done this years ago," Marcus said, his voice steady despite his obvious emotional strain. He moved purposefully to a locked filing cabinet in the corner, its surface dusty but intact. "Catherine always insisted we keep backup records of everything. She said truth needs protection." As he opened the cabinet drawers, Marcus uncovered more than just case files. Photographs of his family lay preserved between folders: Emma's first day at school, Catherine's birthday celebration at the clinic, their last family vacation. Each image reinforced the magnitude of what had been taken from him, but also strengthened his resolve to finish what he had started. Patterson watched as his former student methodically sorted through the documents. The younger man's movements became increasingly confident as his professional instincts resurfaced. "The pattern was there all along," Marcus explained, extracting a particular file. "We saw the same complications in animals that Rachel later documented in humans. Catherine was the one who first noticed the correlation." The most difficult moment came when Marcus discovered Emma's diary, tucked carefully between research papers. His daughter had kept detailed notes about the therapy dogs at their clinic, her childish handwriting recording observations that now seemed prophetic. "She wanted to be a veterinarian too," he said softly, tracing the words with his finger. Working through the night, Marcus and Patterson pieced together the complete timeline of events leading to his family's death. The evidence was comprehensive, detailed clinical observations, statistical analyses, and correspondence with regulatory agencies. Catherine had made copies of everything, anticipating the possibility of their records being destroyed. "I've been hiding from more than just Meridian," Marcus admitted as dawn approached. "I've been hiding from my responsibility to their memory. Catherine and Emma died because we were trying to expose the truth. By running away, I let their sacrifice mean nothing." Patterson placed a supportive hand on his former student's shoulder. "You survived to finish the work," he reminded Marcus. "And now you have the chance to make it right, not just for your family, but for Rachel and Sarah too." The return to the safe house marked a visible transformation in Marcus. The years of grief and self-imposed exile began to fall away, replaced by the focused determination that had once marked his professional life. Sarah, watching him organize the retrieved documents with precise efficiency, saw glimpses of the respected veterinarian he had been. Duke seemed to sense the change in Marcus, staying close as he worked to integrate his old records with Rachel's research. The dog's presence provided a bridge between past and present, connecting Marcus's lost family with their current mission to save Sarah's life. "Emma would have loved him," Marcus said quietly, scratching Duke behind the ears. "She always said golden retrievers were special, that they could see into people's hearts." The simple act of acknowledging his daughter's memory without breaking down marked a crucial step in his healing. As morning light filled the safe house, Marcus finally allowed himself to look at the family photograph he had carried in his wallet for 15 years. Rather than the usual wave of paralyzing grief, he felt a surge of purpose. Catherine and Emma's smiling faces no longer accused him of failure. Instead, they seemed to encourage him forward. "We have everything we need now," he announced to Sarah and Patterson, his voice carrying the authority of both his professional expertise and his personal conviction. "It's time to stop running and start fighting back. We owe it to everyone who sacrificed to get us here." Duke wagged his tail in apparent approval, and Sarah smiled despite her fatigue. The man who had saved her dog was now ready to help save her life, transformed by the very past he had tried so long to escape. In the early morning hours following Marcus's confrontation with his past, Linda Martinez arrived at the safe house with a crucial discovery. While organizing the hospital's archived research materials, she had uncovered a hidden compartment in Rachel's old laboratory desk containing a comprehensive research journal and a set of encrypted hard drives. The journal's final entries revealed Rachel's complete understanding of the connection between Meridian's drug trials and the pattern of medical complications affecting multiple generations. Her meticulous documentation included detailed analyses of patient histories correlating data from both human and veterinary cases, creating an undeniable chain of evidence. Dr. Patterson connected Rachel's encrypted drives to a secure computer system isolated from any network access. The password protection yielded to a combination of dates: Sarah's birthday, the day Rachel received her medical license, and the date she had first noticed irregularities in the trial data. The contents proved more extensive than anyone had anticipated. Rachel didn't just document the problems Sarah observed, examining her sister's detailed research protocols. She developed a comprehensive treatment methodology based on Marcus's original veterinary work. She was building on his success with the therapy dogs, adapting the approach for human application. The files contained video recordings of Rachel's private research sessions, documented late at night when the laboratories were otherwise empty. In them, she methodically explained her findings, creating an evidentiary record that would be difficult to dismiss or discredit. Her foresight in preserving this evidence demonstrated her understanding of the danger she faced. Marcus studied Rachel's adaptation of his veterinary protocols with growing admiration. She took our initial observations about cellular recovery patterns and expanded them significantly, he explained, comparing her notes to his original research. She found a way to reverse the damage rather than just treating symptoms. The most striking discovery came in Rachel's personal medical diary. She had documented her own symptoms, using herself as a test subject for her developing treatment protocol. The entry showed promising initial results, abruptly ending 3 days before her death. Her final notation read: treatment showing positive response. Cellular regeneration exceeding expectations. Meeting with ethics committee tomorrow to present findings. Linda Martinez provided additional context from her years of observing hospital operations. Rachel worked differently in her final months, she recalled. She stayed late, kept duplicate records, and asked unusual questions about the hospital's security protocols. She knew they were watching her. Sarah's medical expertise allowed her to recognize the brilliance of her sister's methodology. Rachel didn't just identify the problem, she explained to the others. She found a way to track the damage through multiple generations, explaining why standard treatments often failed in affected families. Her solution addresses the root cause rather than just managing symptoms. Patterson's review of the encrypted files revealed another layer of Rachel's preparation. She had compiled dossiers on key Meridian executives, documenting their involvement in suppressing negative trial results and manipulating research data. The evidence included internal emails, modified test results, and records of suspicious payments to regulatory officials. Duke remained close to Sarah throughout the review process, his presence a living reminder of Rachel's careful planning. The USB drive in his collar contained compressed copies of her most crucial findings, ensuring the evidence would survive even if her other records were destroyed. As morning light filled the safe house, the full scope of Rachel's research became clear. She had created an unassailable case against Meridian while simultaneously developing a treatment protocol that could help thousands of affected patients. Her work represented not just an expose of corporate malfeasance, but a medical breakthrough that could save lives. Sarah, though weakened by her condition, found renewed strength in her sister's words. Rachel knew she might not survive to complete this work, she said, holding the research journal. But she made sure we would have everything needed to finish it. She protected the truth and provided the solution. Marcus recognized in Rachel's methodology the same dedication to healing that had driven his own research years earlier. She built a bridge between our work, he observed quietly, connected the pieces we couldn't see separately. Now we have to make sure it reaches the people who need it. The unraveling of Meridian Pharmaceuticals' carefully constructed facade began with a series of seemingly unrelated incidents. Victoria Chen published her initial investigative report, focusing on the connection between Marcus's veterinary research and Rachel Collins's findings. Within hours, former Meridian employees began reaching out to her, each carrying pieces of the larger narrative. James Morrison watched from his executive office as the situation spiraled beyond his control. The company's stock price began to fluctuate as investors responded to mounting speculation about past trial data. Internal emails revealed growing concern among board members about potential liability exposure. A breakthrough came when a former Meridian data analyst, Thomas Weber, contacted Dr. Patterson. Weber had maintained private records of the statistical manipulations he had been ordered to perform on trial results. His documentation provided irrefutable evidence of systematic data falsification spanning 2 decades. "They made us normalize the outliers," Weber explained during a recorded interview. "Any adverse reaction that didn't fit their desired outcome was recategorized or eliminated from the final reports. We were told it was standard industry practice, but I kept copies of everything." Morrison's attempts to contain the situation through legal channels backfired spectacularly. The cease and desist letters sent to media outlets drew additional attention to the story. Legal experts began questioning the aggressive nature of Meridian's response, suggesting consciousness of guilt rather than protection of proprietary information. The hospital board, initially hesitant to become involved, found itself forced to acknowledge the mounting evidence. Internal reviews confirmed unauthorized modifications to patient records, particularly in cases connected to Meridian's drug trials. The board chairman initiated a formal investigation, focusing on the circumstances surrounding Rachel Collins's death. Sarah's medical condition unexpectedly served to validate Rachel's research. Her documented symptoms, combined with Marcus's historical veterinary data, provided a clear demonstration of the generational impact of Meridian's trial medications. Medical professionals across the country began identifying similar patterns among their own patients. Linda Martinez organized a network of hospital staff who had witnessed various aspects of the cover-up. Their collective testimony painted a picture of systematic intimidation and evidence suppression. Security logs confirmed unusual access to research facilities during non-standard hours, particularly around the times of Rachel's death and Sarah's recent collapse. Patterson's academic colleagues began conducting independent analyses of the available data. Their peer reviews confirmed the validity of Rachel's methodologies and the significance of her treatment protocols. The scientific community's support lent crucial credibility to their case. Morrison's final attempt to discredit Marcus backfired dramatically when Catherine Bennett's original research notes surfaced. Her meticulous documentation of the veterinary trials, preserved in Marcus's storage unit, directly contradicted Meridian's official trial reports. The timestamps and authentication codes proved the document's legitimacy. Duke's role in preserving and transmitting crucial evidence captured public imagination. The media narrative of a loyal dog carrying vital information that could save lives resonated deeply with audiences. This public sympathy made it increasingly difficult for Meridian to dismiss the accusations as conspiracy theories. The corporate facade began cracking from within as mid-level executives, fearing personal liability, started cooperating with investigators. Internal documents revealed a complex system of bonuses tied to successful trial outcomes, creating institutional pressure to suppress negative results. Victoria Chin's follow-up article exposed the connection between Meridian's legal department and the accidents that had claimed the lives of both the Bennett family and Rachel Collins. Insurance investigations from both incidents showed similar patterns of vehicle tampering, linking them to the same corporate security firm. Sarah, despite her weakening condition, provided crucial testimony via recorded deposition. Her medical expertise, combined with personal experience as both a physician and patient, offered compelling evidence of the drug trial's long-term impacts. Her testimony proved particularly damaging to Meridian's defense. Morrison's final meeting with the board of directors ended with his suspension pending investigation. As he left the corporate headquarters, he found federal investigators waiting with a warrant to seize company records. The years of careful manipulation and cover-ups collapsed under the weight of accumulated evidence. The truth, preserved through years of careful documentation and protected by an unlikely alliance of dedicated professionals, finally emerged into full public view. Meridian Pharmaceuticals, once a pillar of the pharmaceutical industry, faced the consequences of decades of systematic deception. In the quiet hours of dawn at the safe house, Sarah Collins faced the most difficult decision of her life. Her condition had deteriorated significantly, and the implementation of Rachel's treatment protocol carried substantial risks. Dr. Patterson presented the situation with characteristic directness. Proceeding with the untested treatment could either save her life or accelerate her decline. Based on Rachel's research, we have one chance to get this right, Marcus explained, his professional demeanor masking deep concern. The treatment requires precise timing and dosage. Once we begin, we cannot reverse the process. He spread Rachel's detailed protocols across the kitchen table, each page representing hours of meticulous research. Sarah studied her sister's notes, her medical training allowing her to understand both the brilliance of the methodology and its inherent dangers. The treatment would require her to temporarily suspend her current medications, leaving her vulnerable during the critical transition period. The decision carried implications beyond her personal survival. Dr. Patterson outlined the broader context. If this treatment succeeds, it validates Rachel's research and provides hope for thousands of affected patients. If it fails, he left the sentence unfinished, but its weight hung heavily in the room. The risks extended beyond Sarah's individual case. A negative outcome could cast doubt on Rachel's entire body of work. Duke, sensing the gravity of the moment, pressed closer to Sarah's side. His steady presence reminded her of Rachel's foresight, how she had prepared him to protect not just her sister, but the truth itself. Sarah realized that her decision would impact not only her own survival, but the legacy of her sister's sacrifice. Marcus shared his perspective, drawn from years of veterinary research. In the animal trials, we observed a critical window for treatment effectiveness. Based on your current symptoms, we're approaching that window. Waiting carries its own risks. His clinical assessment was tempered by personal understanding. He had faced similar choices regarding his family's legacy. Linda Martinez arrived with Sarah's latest test results, confirming their time constraints. The hospital's laboratory data showed accelerating cellular deterioration. Whatever decision you make, she advised, it needs to be soon. Your system can't sustain this pattern much longer. Victoria Chin, maintaining her vigil outside the safe house, provided another crucial update. Meridian's legal team was preparing to challenge the validity of any experimental treatments, potentially seeking an injunction to prevent the protocol's implementation. Their decision window was shrinking from both medical and legal perspectives. Sarah rose from her chair, moving slowly to the window. The morning sun illuminated the neighborhood, stirring to life, people beginning their daily routines unaware of the momentous decision being made in their midst. She thought of Rachel's courage in facing similar choices, of Marcus's years of carrying the weight of truth alone. If we succeed, she said finally, turning to face her allies, we prove everything: Rachel's research, Marcus's original findings, the generational impact of the trials. We give hope to every family affected by Meridian's deceptions. Her voice strengthened with conviction. If we fail, at least we failed fighting for the truth. Patterson began preparing the necessary equipment, his movements precise and deliberate. Marcus reviewed the treatment protocol one final time, ensuring every detail aligned with Rachel's specifications. Linda documented each step, creating a record that would prove crucial regardless of the outcome. Duke watched the preparations with unusual intensity, as if understanding the significance of what was about to unfold. Sarah knelt beside him, drawing strength from his unwavering loyalty. Rachel knew this moment would come, she whispered, scratching his ears. She made sure we'd have everything we needed, including you. The morning light strengthened as they completed their preparations. Sarah settled into the modified medical chair, surrounded by monitoring equipment. Marcus stood ready to begin the procedure, his years of professional expertise fully restored. Patterson maintained his position by the vital signs monitor, while Linda prepared to document every detail. Rachel believed this would work, Sarah said firmly, extending her arm for the initial injection. She believed enough to give her life protecting this research. I believe enough to risk mine proving it. Her voice carried the same determination that had marked her sister's final days. Duke positioned himself at her feet, his presence a living connection to Rachel's legacy. The moment of decision had arrived, carrying with it the weight of past sacrifices and future hopes. Sarah nodded to Marcus, signaling her readiness to begin. The transformation began organically, sparked by the viral video of Marcus rescuing Duke. Local veterinarians, recognizing their former colleague despite his years of absence, initiated a professional support network. The Phoenix Veterinary Association formally reinstated his license, acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances that had led to his withdrawal from practice. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, director of the city's largest animal hospital, offered her facilities resources for continuing Sarah's treatment. Dr. Bennett's contributions to veterinary medicine were groundbreaking, she stated during a press conference. His research saved countless animals. Now it's our turn to support his efforts to save human lives. The medical community's response proved equally supportive. Dr. Patterson's colleagues from various hospitals contributed their expertise, forming a voluntary medical advisory board to oversee Sarah's treatment protocol. Their involvement lent crucial credibility to the process, making it increasingly difficult for Meridian's legal team to challenge the treatment's legitimacy. Local businesses near the safe house formed an informal protection network. The coffee shop owner who had often shared his day-old pastries with Marcus now kept watch for suspicious vehicles. The neighborhood's retired police officer organized a volunteer security patrol, ensuring Sarah and her team could focus on the treatment without fear of interruption. Victoria Chin's ongoing coverage attracted national attention. Medical professionals across the country began reviewing their own cases, identifying patterns that matched Rachel's research. Support groups formed for families affected by Meridian's trial medications, creating a nationwide network of witnesses to the drug's generational impacts. The hospital staff's solidarity proved particularly moving. Nurses who had worked with Rachel organized shifts to assist with Sarah's care, ensuring round-the-clock medical supervision. Laboratory technicians volunteered their off-duty hours to process test results, maintaining the precise documentation needed to validate the treatment's effectiveness. Duke's role in the story touched hearts across the community. Local pet supply stores donated equipment and specialty items for his continued care. Professional dog trainers offered their services, impressed by his protective instincts and determined to support his ongoing role in Sarah's treatment. The turning point in public opinion came when Marcus's former clients began sharing their stories. Families whose pets he had treated years ago recalled his dedication and expertise. Their testimonials, combined with evidence of his early warnings about the drug trials, transformed him from a mysterious homeless figure into a respected whistleblower who had sacrificed everything for the truth. Financial support materialized through a carefully managed trust fund established by the veterinary community to support both Sarah's treatment and the broader investigation. The fund's transparent administration and clear purpose attracted donations from medical professionals and concerned citizens alike. Dr. Patterson's academic network mobilized to protect and validate Rachel's research. Universities offered secure storage for documentation, while research teams began independently verifying her methodology. Their involvement created an additional layer of professional oversight that strengthened the treatment protocol's credibility. Linda Martinez coordinated the hospital staff's support efforts, ensuring that their assistance remained both effective and discreet. Her years of experience in hospital administration proved invaluable in managing the complex logistics of their operation while maintaining necessary medical privacy. The community's support extended beyond professional assistance. Local restaurants ensured regular meals reached the safe house. Neighbors quietly maintained the property's appearance to avoid drawing attention. Each small act of kindness contributed to a protective network that allowed the medical team to focus on their critical work. After 3 days of intensive treatment following Rachel's protocol, Sarah's medical team observed the first significant signs of improvement. The cellular regeneration patterns precisely matched those documented in Rachel's research, providing tangible validation of her theoretical framework. Dr. Patterson meticulously recorded each development, noting how Sarah's body responded to the carefully calibrated treatment regimen. The initial blood work revealed a marked decrease in inflammatory markers, while subsequent tests showed steady improvement in organ function. These results aligned perfectly with the progression Rachel had predicted in her final research notes. Marcus's veterinary expertise proved invaluable in monitoring the treatment's subtle effects. His experience with similar patterns in animal trials allowed him to anticipate and address potential complications before they developed. The correlation between his earlier veterinary observations and Sarah's human response data provided crucial validation of the treatment's cross-species applicability. Linda Martinez coordinated with the hospital laboratory to process Sarah's hourly test results, establishing a comprehensive data set that would prove essential for future treatment applications. The monitoring systems tracked every measurable parameter, creating an unprecedented record of the treatment's effectiveness. By the 5th day, Sarah's improvement became undeniable. Her strength gradually returned and her vital signs stabilized at levels that hadn't been seen since before her diagnosis. The medical team observed systematic reversal of the cellular damage that had characterized her condition, precisely following the progression Rachel had theorized. Duke remained a constant presence during the treatment, his behavior providing unexpected insights into Sarah's recovery. His relaxed demeanor and renewed playfulness offered early indicators of improvement, often preceding measurable changes in her medical tests. The medical team began documenting his behavioral responses as an additional metric of treatment effectiveness. Dr. Rodriguez's veterinary team contributed valuable insights by comparing Sarah's recovery patterns with historical data from animal treatments. Their analysis revealed remarkable similarities in cellular repair mechanisms across species, supporting Rachel's hypothesis about the universal nature of the healing response she had identified. The breakthrough's implications extended far beyond Sarah's individual case. The documented success of Rachel's protocol opened new possibilities for treating thousands of patients affected by similar pharmaceutical trials. The Medical Advisory Board began developing guidelines for implementing the treatment on a broader scale. Patterson organized the mounting evidence into a comprehensive medical report, detailing every aspect of the treatment's success. His documentation emphasized the critical role of Rachel's research in developing the protocol and Marcus's veterinary insights in its implementation. The report would serve as the foundation for peer-reviewed publication and regulatory approval. As Sarah's strength returned, she participated actively in documenting her experience, providing valuable first-hand insights into the treatment's effects. Her medical training allowed her to articulate subtle changes that might have gone unnoticed, enriching the clinical data with detailed patient perspective. The breakthrough vindicated both Rachel's dedication and Marcus's early warnings. Their combined research, bridging the gap between veterinary and human medicine, had created a treatment protocol that addressed not just symptoms but underlying causes. This success represented more than individual healing. It marked the emergence of a new approach to treating pharmaceutical trial complications. By the 10th day, Sarah's recovery had progressed far enough to begin reducing supportive medications. The treatment protocol had not only halted her decline but initiated genuine healing, offering hope to countless others affected by similar trial medications. James Morrison arrived at Meridian Pharmaceuticals headquarters early that morning to find federal investigators already occupying the building's lobby. The company's imminent downfall had triggered emergency protocols, and Morrison recognized that his carefully constructed world was unraveling at an alarming pace. Inside his executive office, Morrison initiated his contingency plan. He contacted a specialized team of corporate security contractors, authorizing them to retrieve and destroy specific documents from multiple locations. Their primary target was the safe house where Sarah Collins continued her recovery under Marcus Bennett's supervision. Dr. Patterson received an urgent warning from his hospital contacts about unusual activity in Meridian's legal department. Documents were being shredded at an unprecedented rate, and several key executives had suddenly taken emergency leave. These actions suggested an impending aggressive move against their team. Victoria Chin's sources within Meridian confirmed the company's desperate state. The board of directors had scheduled an emergency session and corporate security teams were mobilizing. She immediately notified Sarah's protection team about the heightened threat level, while continuing to document every development. Morrison's security contractors positioned themselves strategically around the safe house perimeter. Their presence didn't go unnoticed. Duke's heightened alertness warned the team of approaching danger. Marcus, drawing from his years of street survival instincts, recognized the professional nature of the surveillance. Sarah, though still recovering, maintained remarkable composure as they prepared for confrontation. The treatment's success had restored much of her strength, and her determination to protect Rachel's research matched the intensity of their opponent's desire to destroy it. Linda Martinez activated the hospital's emergency protocols, securing backup copies of all treatment data across multiple secure locations. The medical community support network stood ready to preserve and protect the evidence of their breakthrough, ensuring that even a successful raid couldn't erase the truth. Dr. Patterson coordinated with local law enforcement, providing them with detailed evidence of Meridian's previous attempts to silence whistleblowers. The police established discreet surveillance of their own, monitoring the corporate security team's movements while maintaining a protective presence around the safe house. Morrison made his final move as evening approached, personally leading his team toward the safe house. His desperation had overcome his usual caution. He now understood that his only chance for survival lay in destroying all evidence of the treatment's success and discrediting its developers. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just individual fates, but the future of medical accountability. Sarah's team, supported by the community and armed with irrefutable evidence, prepared to face the full force of corporate desperation. Duke maintained his protective vigil, a living symbol of the loyalty and determination that had brought them to this crucial moment. The confrontation's mounting tension took an unexpected toll on Sarah's recovery. Despite the treatment's initial success, her vital signs began showing concerning fluctuations. Dr. Patterson observed elevated stress markers in her hourly blood tests, indicating that her system was struggling to maintain the progress they had achieved. Marcus recognized the symptoms immediately, drawing from his experience with post-treatment complications in veterinary cases. The combination of physical stress and emotional strain had begun affecting Sarah's cellular regeneration process. The timing could not have been worse, with Morrison's security teams establishing positions around the safe house. Dr. Patterson maintained careful documentation of Sarah's declining condition while coordinating with their medical support network. The treatment protocol required absolute stability to complete its final phase, but the current situation made that increasingly difficult to achieve. Each disruption to Sarah's recovery routine threatened to undermine weeks of careful progress. Linda Martinez, monitoring Sarah's vital signs, noted a dangerous pattern emerging. The stress-induced complications closely resembled those documented in Rachel's final research notes, suggesting that emotional trauma could trigger a cascade effect in patients undergoing the experimental treatment. This development added urgency to their already critical situation. Duke demonstrated remarkable sensitivity to Sarah's deteriorating condition. The golden retriever positioned himself precisely where he could maintain physical contact with her while remaining alert to external threats. His steady presence appeared to have a measurable impact on her vital signs, providing a small but crucial stabilizing effect. The medical team worked efficiently to adjust Sarah's treatment protocol, attempting to compensate for the stress-induced complications. Dr. Patterson implemented contingency measures that Rachel had theorized but never had the opportunity to test. Their options were limited by the need to maintain the treatment's delicate chemical balance while addressing the new symptoms. Sarah, despite her weakening condition, remained determined to protect Rachel's research. Each labored breath strengthened her resolve to ensure that her sister's sacrifice would not be in vain. She understood that the success or failure of the treatment protocol now hinged on more than just medical factors. It required her to find strength she wasn't sure she possessed. As evening approached, the situation reached a critical juncture. Sarah's condition required immediate medical intervention, but moving her to a hospital would expose them to Morrison's teams. The safe house had become both a fortress and a potential trap, with Sarah's deteriorating health adding a devastating countdown to their already desperate circumstances. Marcus and Patterson exchanged knowing looks, recognizing that they faced an impossible choice. They could maintain their secure position and risk Sarah's condition becoming critical, or attempt evacuation and expose themselves to their pursuers. Either option carried potentially fatal consequences. Sarah's voice, though weakened, remained steady as she made her position clear. Rachel never backed down. Neither will I. Her determination resonated through the room, even as the medical monitors displayed increasingly concerning data. During the critical hours of Sarah's health crisis, Duke demonstrated an extraordinary level of awareness that transcended typical canine behavior. The golden retriever systematically positioned himself to maintain constant physical contact with Sarah while simultaneously monitoring multiple entry points to the safe house, displaying a remarkable synthesis of his protective training and emotional intelligence. Dr. Patterson observed that Duke's presence had a measurable impact on Sarah's vital signs. When the dog maintained direct contact, her heart rate stabilized and her blood pressure moderated. These physiological responses suggested a therapeutic effect that complemented their medical interventions, supporting Rachel's documented theories about the role of emotional support in recovery. Marcus noted that Duke exhibited precise behavioral patterns that reflected his specialized training. The dog alternated between pressing against Sarah's side during moments of particular distress and maintaining a vigilant guard position when security threats escalated. This calculated response demonstrated Rachel's foresight in preparing Duke for exactly this type of crisis. When Sarah's condition required emergency medication adjustments, Duke anticipated the medical team's movements with remarkable precision. He shifted position to allow access while maintaining protective contact, displaying an understanding of medical procedures that suggested detailed preparation by Rachel. His behavior provided crucial assistance during these delicate interventions. The dog's acute sensory awareness proved invaluable as Morrison's security teams attempted to breach the perimeter. Duke's subtle changes in posture and attention alerted the protection team to approaching threats before their surveillance equipment detected movement. His reactions enabled them to adjust their defensive positions without disturbing Sarah's fragile recovery. Throughout the night, Duke refused all offers of rest or relief. His unwavering focus on Sarah's condition matched the dedication of the medical team, demonstrating a level of loyalty that transcended mere training. The bond between patient and guardian had evolved into something that even Marcus, with his extensive veterinary experience, found remarkable. When Sarah experienced a particularly severe episode of treatment complications, Duke's response proved crucial. His immediate alert brought the medical team to her side seconds before monitoring equipment registered the crisis. Those precious moments allowed Dr. Patterson to implement emergency protocols that stabilized her condition. Linda Martinez, coordinating with the medical support team, documented Duke's responses as part of their comprehensive treatment records. His behavior patterns provided valuable indicators of Sarah's condition, often detecting subtle changes before they manifested in measurable symptoms. This unexpected contribution to their medical data would later prove significant in validating Rachel's research. As dawn approached and Sarah's condition remained precarious, Duke maintained his position with unwavering determination. His presence provided not just physical protection but emotional anchoring that helped Sarah maintain her resolve. The dog embodied Rachel's enduring care for her sister, transformed into a living shield against both medical crisis and external threats. The medical team recognized that Duke had become an integral part of their treatment protocol, his behavior woven seamlessly into their emergency response procedures. His dedication represented more than animal loyalty. It demonstrated the culmination of Rachel's careful preparation and deep understanding of both medical and emotional support requirements. Marcus Bennett faced the most crucial decision of his life as dawn approached the safe house. Through surveillance cameras, he observed Morrison's security teams taking final positions for their assault. Sarah's condition remained critical, requiring immediate hospital care, while their evidence against Meridian needed protection. The situation demanded a solution that seemed impossible until Marcus recognized what needed to be done. Drawing upon his years of professional experience, Marcus carefully prepared two comprehensive dossiers. The first contained complete documentation of Rachel's research, his original veterinary findings, and Sarah's successful treatment data. The second held evidence of Meridian's corporate malfeasance, including proof of their involvement in both his family's tragedy and Rachel's death. Dr. Patterson immediately understood Marcus's intention when he received detailed instructions and copies of both dossiers. There has to be another way, he protested, but the resolute expression on his former student's face confirmed that Marcus had made his decision. The plan was elegantly simple. Marcus would create a diversion, drawing Morrison's security teams away from the safe house while Sarah was evacuated to the hospital. Linda Martinez coordinated with their hospital contacts, ensuring a secure route for Sarah's transport once the operation began. The medical team prepared for immediate departure, recognizing that timing would prove crucial to both Sarah's survival and the success of their evidence preservation efforts. Before implementing his plan, Marcus knelt beside Duke, placing a gentle hand on the dog's head. "You've done exactly what Rachel trained you to do," he said softly. "Now it's my turn." Duke's quiet whimper suggested an understanding of the moment's gravity, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. Sarah, though weakened, grasped Marcus's hand firmly. "You've already lost enough," she whispered, but Marcus shook his head, his expression peaceful for the first time in 15 years. "Catherine and Emma would be proud of this moment," he responded. "Some things are worth any sacrifice." With precise timing, Marcus initiated his plan. He emerged from the safe house carrying a decoy briefcase, deliberately attracting the attention of Morrison's surveillance teams. His apparent attempt to escape with crucial documents drew security forces away from their positions, creating the exact diversion needed for Sarah's evacuation. Dr. Patterson efficiently directed Sarah's transport team through their now clear escape route, while Linda Martinez coordinated with hospital security to ensure safe arrival. The real evidence, already transmitted to multiple secure locations, would remain protected regardless of the outcome of Marcus's diversion. As Morrison's security teams converged on his position, Marcus maintained his composure. His years on the street had taught him every hidden passage and escape route in the area. He led his pursuers on a carefully planned chase, ensuring maximum distance between them and Sarah's evacuation route. The dawn light illuminated Marcus's face as he made his final move, deliberately allowing himself to be cornered. His surrender would occupy Morrison's full attention, providing the time needed for Sarah to reach safety and their evidence to reach proper authorities. In this moment, Marcus felt a profound sense of peace, knowing he had finally honored both his family's memory and Rachel's sacrifice. The culmination of events unfolded with precision at the federal courthouse in downtown Phoenix. Victoria Chen's comprehensive reporting, combined with the evidence secured by Patterson's team, triggered an immediate federal investigation into Meridian Pharmaceuticals. The morning newspapers carried front-page coverage of federal agents entering Meridian's corporate headquarters. James Morrison's attempt to silence Marcus backfired spectacularly. His security team's pursuit was documented by multiple surveillance cameras, and their aggressive tactics provided clear evidence of corporate intimidation. Federal prosecutors moved swiftly, issuing warrants for Morrison and key Meridian executives. In the hospital, Sarah's condition stabilized under proper medical care. Her successful treatment served as living proof of Rachel's research validity. Medical professionals from across the country began reviewing their cases, identifying patterns that supported the findings. The scope of Meridian's deception became increasingly apparent as more affected families came forward. The prosecution's case proved overwhelming. Morrison's own records, meticulously maintained out of habitual caution, detailed years of systematic evidence suppression. His documented involvement in both the Bennett family tragedy and Rachel Collins's death provided the foundation for multiple criminal charges. Dr. Patterson presented the combined research evidence to a special congressional committee. His testimony, supported by Marcus's original veterinary findings and Rachel's comprehensive documentation, illuminated the full extent of Meridian's criminal negligence. The committee's public hearings drew national attention to the need for increased pharmaceutical trial oversight. Marcus, released from temporary custody as federal authorities recognized his role as a key witness, received a standing ovation from the medical community. His years of sacrifice and dedication to the truth transformed him from a discredited veterinarian into a celebrated whistleblower. Professional organizations across the country began implementing Bennett protocols for monitoring drug trial safety. Linda Martinez's careful preservation of hospital records proved crucial in establishing the timeline of corporate interference. Her documentation of unauthorized record alterations and suspicious access patterns supported criminal conspiracy charges against multiple Meridian executives. The federal investigation expanded to include regulatory officials who had facilitated Meridian's deception. Each revealed connection strengthened the prosecution's case, demonstrating the extensive nature of the corporate conspiracy. The evidence protected through Marcus's sacrifice ensured that no responsible party escaped accountability. The implementation of Rachel Collins's treatment protocol marked a transformative moment in medical history. 6 months after Sarah's successful recovery, medical centers across the country began offering the treatment to patients affected by Meridian's trial medications. The Collins-Bennett protocol, as it became known, demonstrated remarkable effectiveness in addressing long-term pharmaceutical complications. Phoenix General Hospital established the first dedicated treatment center, with Dr. Patterson serving as medical director and Marcus Bennett providing crucial oversight of the integrated veterinary and human medical approaches. The facility became a model for similar centers nationwide, implementing the comprehensive treatment methodology that Rachel had envisioned. Sarah resumed her medical practice, now specializing in treating patients affected by pharmaceutical trials. Her personal experience combined with her medical expertise made her uniquely qualified to guide patients through the treatment process. The success rates under her supervision exceeded even the most optimistic projections, providing hope to families who had previously faced uncertain futures. The medical community's response proved overwhelming. Research institutions began incorporating Rachel's findings into their standard protocols for pharmaceutical trial oversight. The integration of veterinary and human medical data in tracking drug responses became standard practice, creating a more comprehensive approach to medication safety assessment. Linda Martinez coordinated the establishment of a national database tracking treatment outcomes. The systematic documentation of patient responses provided invaluable data for continuing research and protocol refinement. Medical professionals could now identify and address complications before they became severe, preventing the generational impact that had affected so many families. Dr. Rodriguez's veterinary hospital partnered with the treatment center, implementing parallel protocols for animals affected by pharmaceutical trials. The collaboration between veterinary and human medical teams fulfilled Rachel's vision of comprehensive healthcare oversight, ensuring that drug safety was evaluated across species barriers. The treatment's success extended beyond direct pharmaceutical complications. Researchers discovered applications for addressing various forms of cellular damage, opening new possibilities in regenerative medicine. Rachel's methodical research had laid the groundwork for advances that would benefit patients far beyond the original scope of her work. International medical organizations began adopting the protocol, recognizing its potential for addressing similar cases worldwide. The Collins-Bennett protocol became a standard component of medical training programs, ensuring that future generations of healthcare providers would understand the importance of comprehensive drug safety evaluation. Most significantly, families who had lost hope found renewed possibility through the treatment program. Children of trial participants, previously facing uncertain medical futures, showed remarkable improvement under the protocol. The generational impact of pharmaceutical damage could now be addressed effectively, breaking a cycle that had affected countless families. Sarah and Marcus regularly received letters from grateful patients and their families, each success story validating their fight for truth and justice. The treatment center's waiting room displayed photographs of recovered patients alongside Rachel's portrait, creating a living testament to the power of dedicated medical research and unwavering determination. 1 year after the successful prosecution of Meridian Pharmaceuticals, the Collins-Bennett Treatment Center celebrated its official dedication. The autumn morning brought together all those who had fought to preserve Rachel's legacy. The facility's entrance featured a memorial garden, where a bronze plaque honored both Rachel Collins and the Bennett family. Sarah, fully recovered and radiating health, stood at the podium addressing the gathered crowd. Her medical practice had expanded to include oversight of the center's research division, continuing the work her sister had begun. Duke sat attentively at her feet, his presence a constant reminder of the bond that had brought them all together. Marcus Bennett, restored to his proper place in the medical community, had found peace in mentoring a new generation of veterinary researchers. His office, adjacent to the treatment center's main research laboratory, displayed photographs of Catherine and Emma alongside his restored medical credentials. Their memory now inspired progress rather than haunting his conscience. Dr. Patterson observed the ceremony with profound satisfaction. His long career had culminated in this moment, watching his former student and his late colleague's sister transform personal tragedy into hope for countless others. The treatment center represented the realization of dreams that had seemed impossible just a year earlier. Linda Martinez continued her role as the center's administrative director, ensuring that Rachel's methodical approach to documentation became standard practice throughout the facility. Her organizational systems guaranteed that every patient's journey contributed to the growing body of research, helping refine and improve treatment protocols. The ceremony reached its emotional peak when Sarah unveiled the center's research library, dedicated to Rachel Collins. The comprehensive collection included Rachel's complete research, Marcus's original veterinary studies, and the expanding database of successful treatments. The library would serve as a resource for medical professionals worldwide. Duke played a special role in the center's operations, having been certified as its first therapy dog. His intuitive understanding of patient distress made him invaluable in the treatment process. New patients found comfort in his gentle presence, just as he had comforted Sarah during her recovery. The day concluded with a private gathering in the Memorial Garden. Sarah, Marcus, and Patterson shared quiet reflections on their journey. The path that had brought them together, though marked by loss and sacrifice, had led to something greater than any of them had imagined possible. Victoria Chen's final article about the center's opening emphasized the human element of their story. She described how personal tragedy had forged unlikely allies into family, and how their combined dedication had transformed individual loss into collective hope. As evening approached, Sarah and Marcus stood in the garden, watching Duke explore the newly planted flowers. The golden retriever had aged gracefully, his muzzle now touched with gray but his spirit unchanged. He remained a living link to Rachel, a guardian of truth, and a symbol of the loyalty that had helped justice prevail. The Collins Bennett Treatment Center stood as a testament to the power of unwavering dedication to truth and healing. Within its walls, Rachel's vision of comprehensive medical care continued to evolve, saving lives and protecting future generations from pharmaceutical harm. The facility represented not just a medical breakthrough, but the triumph of human spirit over corporate greed. We hope Duke and Sarah's story touched your heart as much as it touched ours. Such tales remind us of the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals, and the power of unwavering loyalty and courage in the face of adversity. What moment in the story resonated most with you? Perhaps it was Duke's unwavering dedication to Sarah, Marcus's journey from loss to redemption, or the triumph of truth over corporate deception. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective adds another valuable dimension to this powerful narrative. If you believe in the importance of sharing stories that celebrate hope, healing, and the enduring power of the human spirit, consider subscribing to our channel. We're committed to bringing you meaningful narratives that inspire and uplift. Enable notifications to join us on this journey of discovering extraordinary stories of ordinary heroes. Every story of courage deserves to be shared. If Duke and Sarah's journey moved you, consider sharing it with friends and family who might find hope in their story. Together, we can create a ripple effect of inspiration, reminding others that even in our darkest moments, light can find its way through, just as it did for Marcus, Sarah, and Duke.